gotta go. Set. Get the machine gun up! Hey, is he talking about this? Oh, okay. It's an AR pistol. But it'll work.
So Brandon asked me to get the machine gun. Post said it was a pistol.
An AR pistol.
What? Oh, he just changed the barrel on it. How is it not a machine gun? It literally is putting another belt in. Okay, yeah, so it takes linked ammo. And it has a 3-position safety. It's a machine gun.
No, dummy, this is a machine gun. Machine guns, belt feds in particular, bring tremendous capability to the unit. And that capability is chiefly in the ability to have a better chance of having fire superiority. And what fire superiority brings you is a number of things. One, fire suppression. This is going to help you with maneuverability and also just having better defensive positions. Now, recently, as you guys see, there's been a new trend of having forced reset rifles, whether it's a belt fed or just an IAR, becoming a thing among the civilian defense industry. And now this topic of conversation is now relevant for us civilians. So before recent times, I would say, having a belt-fed machine gun of some sort or something that is similar to its capability was just not in the realm of conversation for us civilians. We've seen trends before of particular military capabilities becoming more and more prevalent within the civilian defense industry. For example, we've seen short barrel rifles become very popular, suppressors, we've seen night vision, body armor, thermals, precision weapons, and now what we're seeing is weapons with force reset capabilities that are able to mimic or be very similar to the capabilities of true machine guns like this M249 SAW here. So now what we're going to do in this video is we're going to compare the performance of this FightLite paired with an FRT trigger directly to its military counterpart, an actual machine gun, an M249 SAW. This is technically not a machine gun, it's just a force reset rifle. This is an actual open bolt machine gun. So the idea with this setup here is to clone, mimic the capabilities of the gun. And so we're going to compare a various number of things here to see how well it actually conforms next to the real deal. So as we start, the first thing I want to talk about is the IAR concept. So the Marine Corps did swap from the M249 belt fed to a rifle like this, the M27 IAR. And chiefly the reason behind that swap over was not that this is more capable than the belt fed counterpart in terms of what these machine guns are supposed to be able to do. But these are lighter, more maneuverable, and a little bit easier to maintain. So there is a trend right now. What we're seeing is people setting up guns like this LMT here with a force reset trigger, and they are thinking that this can bring the same capability that this guy can. It can bring a little bit of it, but this guy does not have swappable barrels. Machine guns get very hot. You're going to need to be able to swap barrels quickly. It cannot take link ammunition, so you're going to rely on extended magazines, which a lot of these just aren't reliable, and also they just simply aren't 100 or 200 round belts. So yes, this is a little bit better, but it's still not quite nearly as good as what we have potentially right here. Now the operating system between both of these guns is pretty similar. They're both piston guns. This does have an AR-15 buffer tube in it, so you are able to kind of tune this like you would a normal AR when it comes down to your buffer weight and spring, the tension of your spring. Both of these do have hot swappable barrels. So with the bolt open on both of these guns, you can take the barrel out and do a quick change barrel, which is very, very important for guns that are expected to have a high rate of fire for a long period of time. The biggest difference between both of these guns, however, is that the actual machine gun is an open bolt firing weapon versus the FightLite is a closed bolt. So if this was an open bolt system, it would be an actual machine gun according to the ATF. But this being a closed bolt is going to definitely cause some problems with the heat mitigation side of things. So the reason why we have open bolt guns for our machine guns is it allows heat to escape and reduce the risk of cook-offs extensively. However, closed bolt gun, that's going to be something we have to watch out closely for. This gun's going to heat up a lot quicker. Now, one advantage to the FightLite over the M249 SAW, other than the weight that you guys saw on the screen, this gun is much lighter, is the FRT trigger actually. So the FRT trigger does have 3 positions. We have safe, fire, and full fun mode. So if I wanted to run this as a standard carbine in some instances with just a magazine in it, or even just with the belts, I can fire it semi-auto. The M249 SAW does not have that capability. It's safe or full fun mode only. Now when it comes down to what type of ammunition sources both of these guns can take, it's the exact same. Both of them can take standard magazines or belts. So they can take the standard 100 round belts or the 200 round belts, and they're both dual feed capability basically. So other than that, chiefly in principle, these guns are very, very similar. So now what we're gonna do is we're just go through a couple of evaluations, not really tests, and Alex and Tyler are gonna help me out with that. So as we get into this performance test, I just want to note real quick that we are not testing durability or reliability of these guns. These are both a sample size of 1. This was also originally a semi-automatic M249 that we have converted. So there's just a lot of variables at play here. And also if this thing ran great, that ran poorly, or vice versa, it's still just a sample size of 1. So what we're trying to test here is just how well performance-wise do these guns compare against each other, and also how well ergonomically wise can we manipulate these guns. So first up is going to be a barrel change test. Tyler here is going to swap out the barrels as fast as he can basically. These guns are completely dry, they're completely cold, so we don't need to worry about cook-offs or hang fires or anything like that, so don't worry about clearing procedures right now. We're going to try and get through a couple tests before we get these guns really hot. So Tyler, you ready to do this? 3, 2, 1, go. Very nice. Ready to do this? All right, on 3, 3, 2, 1, go. All righty. Nice, that was quick. As you guys saw, obviously the M249 is just much faster for both of the guys. With the FightLite, just one thing to note on how Alex changed out the barrel. It's much easier to change the barrel if you're able to grab something other than the handle of the barrel like Alex did. These guns are completely cold, so he's able to grab the suppressor. But if you're trying to change that barrel using the handle, it's just extremely difficult, right? It's very hard. Yeah. And the reason for that is mainly because of how tight this button is. I'm hoping this breaks in over time, but right now, for some people, including myself, it's almost too hard to do with a single hand. If I have any sort of fatigue in my grip, it's just not doable. I'm actually gonna need to require 2 hands and trying to bump it out quickly or something like that. And that goes for getting the barrel off and putting back on. So, but both of you guys reloaded these, or swapped these barrels out pretty quick. So next, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do a reload test to see how fast we can reload. So that's up next. All right, so first up, belt to belt. All right, so we're gonna start with the guns in condition 4, so completely empty, bolt forward on the starting position with the magazines off to the side. All right, ready to do this, Alex? All right, on 3, 3, 2, 1, go. Dude, that was good. That was a quick reload, and that was a good fix. That was awesome. All right, so starting with a belt, the gun is loaded and chambered. You're gonna reload it to a magazine. Are you ready? Yep. All right, on 3, 3, 2, 1, go. So speed reload test, so just magazine to magazine swap. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Times between both of the guns are pretty similar with the various different types of reloads. I will say going to magazines, so either from a belt or magazine to magazine on the FightLite is probably a little easier, would you say? Just a standard AR-15 lower. The SAW magazine well is a little sticky. It does work a little better with aluminum mags versus P-mags, kind of what it was designed for. But other than that, the only really advantage for reloads is going to come with the little catch for links on the feed tray that the SAW has, but the FightLite does not. As you guys saw, these guys struggling a little bit to keep the rounds on the tray. So without that catch, now you can, with like links, they generally is a piece of plastic, I forgot what that piece is called, at the beginning of the link. So when you put the rounds over, it'll catch here on the side. We don't have any of those. That will make the reload a lot easier. But if you are shooting this regularly, you're not gonna probably keep that plastic piece. So not having that little catch there for links definitely slows down and makes the reloads for this a little awkward. You're gonna have to put it on here, kind of like cant the gun to the side so your fingers are out of the way when you close this, or kind of hold on to the feed or the belt on the side as you close the tray to keep it on the feed tray. So a little awkward there, but it is what it is. So now what we're gonna do a quick accuracy test with these guns. Now, to be clear, this SAW here has been in the armory for quite some time. It's had a lot of rounds through it, so we're not gonna, group test these things for precision. What we're gonna do is do a 30-round cyclic rate burst from both of these guns onto a USPSA target, and we're just gonna see how well we're able to control the gun in the prone. So not so much accuracy, but just really our ability as gunners to be able to see how well we can manage the recoil and keep the gun on target well. And the reason why this is so important is, as machine gunners, we want our first burst on target to be a long, good burst that's very accurate. That's going to be very fundamentally important as your role for either your civilian auto rifleman, or if you have an actual machine gun, you're as a machine gunner. So let's go ahead and get to that test. All right, here we go. Cycling, 30 rounds. All right, here we go. All right, so this is my FightLite target. I have 27 of 30 hits there. The group is not too bad. So again, this is 50 yards, cyclic rate in the prone. We're shooting 62 grain, by the way, so it's kind of hot. And then with the M249, I squeezed all 30 in there. So clearly for me, the M249 was a little bit more controllable. It was a lot slower, as you guys can tell from the fire rate. But the M249 was way more gassy. That flow through can on the FightLite definitely helped. So Alex, what do you got?
So on the left target, that's the FightLite target. I've got 21 out of 30 hits. You can definitely tell that the FightLite runs. It doesn't chug like the SAW does. I mean, the SAW's still fast, don't get me wrong. SAW target is 28 out of 30 hits. Like Brandon's already said, that gun's just gassy, and of course he outshot me once again.
Yes, on the left here, I got the FightLite at 29 hits out of 30. It was just quick. It's so fast, it's weird that it's not a machine gun. And then on the SAW, I don't really know what happened on the SAW. It just sort of got away from me, and I got 16 out of 30 hits, so did pretty bad.
All right, so the last test is probably going to be the most interesting one. This is going to be a quick evaluation of how well these guns do with some heat. So the M249 has a kind of a standard of being able to maintain a consistent rate of fire for 2 minutes before a barrel change happens. So we're going to do the standard old ditty from the Marine Corps of die, mother effer die. As our rate of fire, and these two guys are going to do talking machine guns for 2 minutes straight, do a barrel change. We're going to do that 4 total times. So what I'm going to be gathering data-wise from this is, once they do a barrel change, I'm going to measure the temperature of the barrel as soon as they change the barrel. And then once we get through 8 total minutes of this, so both barrels have been shot twice, both of the guns, we're going to get a temperature of the chamber. So basically we're going to pull the bolt to the rear once the guns are clear and get a good reading of right inside the chamber of how hot each of these guns are. So we have a Knights Armament NT4 suppressor on the SAW with a 12.5-inch barrel and a Huxworks suppressor on the 12.5-inch barrel for the FightLite, and then they both have 16-inch non-suppressed barrels. So it's going to be pretty similar, I think. I think if we're going to see any heat differences, it's going to be because of the type of gun it is. So let's get after it.
That is literally. That one's on fire too.
So we can't put it on the cardboard. Can't put it on the cardboard.
Not only is this gun gassy, that brass is hot, and the cardboard's on fire.
Interesting. All right. All right, so that didn't go as planned. We had a couple of malfunctions and ran short on ammunition. So we're gonna adjust fires, no pun intended, a little bit on this evaluation. So each shooter has about 400 rounds now, and we're gonna get through about a minute to a minute and a half. So basically after they're done with their first initial belt, they're gonna do a barrel swap. I'll read temperatures, we're gonna throw the new barrel in, and then they're gonna get through their magazines on the next barrel. So we're gonna start with unsuppressed and then go suppressed. The suppressed barrels got extremely hot. So we're gonna try and manage that a little bit better this time. All right, let's do it. Barrel change,
Yep.
barrel change. On this Alex.
Yep, that's third.
You out, Tyler? Yeah, I'm out. Again.
So pretty interesting results from that little heat mitigation evaluation that we did. Now I will say there's definitely better ways to go about testing that sort of thing, but that's just what we did. I will say it didn't really work out the way we drew it up, but we did get some data from the evaluation that I think will still be useful. So over the course of that evaluation, it did go for about 8 minutes, and we shot a total of 2,000 rounds between the two guns, split directly in the middle. So both guns shot the exact same amount of rounds. So what we measured was the temperatures of the gun. That was the whole point of it. And we're doing that because, just as a reminder, this is a closed bolt gun. The M249 is an open bolt. Machine guns get very hot. And when they do get very hot, there's a chance of cook-off, as in a round discharging because of how hot the gun gets. So for guns that have high fire rates, expected to sustain high fire rates for a long period of time that are going to get very hot, we need to make sure that it's able to do that, at least comparatively to its military counterpart, and it's still in a safe manner. So that's the whole point of the heat mitigation evaluation. So for the FightLite, so like I said, some pretty interesting results. On the suppressed barrel, the hottest the suppressed barrel got, and we measured this right at the gas block on both barrels, was 700 degrees suppressed barrel. The SAW, 725. So pretty interesting that the SAW barrel got hotter. However, at the chamber of the FightLite, it got up to 300 degrees versus the SAW only got to 225 degrees. So that's exactly what we expected, was the chamber of the closed bolt gun to get much hotter. I believe a cook-off is right around 450 to 475 degrees. So at the rate that we're going, only a couple more minutes, probably 3 to 4 more minutes, we're gonna be in cook-off territory for the FightLite. The SAW was probably gonna take at least double that amount of time because especially with the bolt being closed, and if there's no firing happening, that heat is still going to build. With the open bolt, a lot more air is gonna be able to escape. So this is at like an exponential rate is going to heat up faster comparatively to this. So same thing with the unsuppressed barrels too. So the SAW barrel got to 655 degrees at its hottest point, and the FightLite got to 600 degrees. However, the chambers, again, FightLite got hotter, 250 degrees versus only 220 degrees. So really, really interesting to note on the SAW, the open bolt gun, that the chambers actually didn't really change in temperature between suppressed and unsuppressed. So you can just see how much better the heat mitigation is with the open bolt gun. So the biggest problem we ran into with the FightLite during that little heat mitigation test was the handle itself on the barrel. So it got so hot on both of the barrels, suppressed and unsuppressed, that the handle melted. I measured the handle and it got up to 200 degrees when I measured it. I think it was hotter at one point. That is too hot to touch. The SAW's handle was good to go. It didn't even feel like it heated up at all. So this is actually a pretty big problem I think absolutely needs to be addressed with this system, because machine guns, this is not a machine gun, forced reset rifle, need to have quick change barrels. And if this is too hot to touch, it really makes changing the barrel very difficult to do. And also just the ergonomics of this handle are honestly terrible. I think something needs to be done here. Someone needs to make an aftermarket component, or just take it to a fabrication shop and someone weld something to get that handle out a little bit farther. It's too close, it heats up too quick, and like I said, just not very ergonomic. Now, another interesting thing that we ran into with the FightLite, not so much the gun itself, but was the suppressor that is on this gun. So we have a Huxworks can on here. The baffles, the first two baffles on this can, we'll try to get a camera in there to show you guys, are almost 40 to probably 30 to 40% degraded. So I will say this can has not been shot very much in the armory. It was definitely sub 500 rounds before going on this gun. And really the only high fire rate that this suppressor encountered on this guy was during that heat mitigation test, and it was only half the round. So we're thinking max full auto of kind of like a torture test type fire rate of 500 rounds, and the first two baffles started to degrade. Pretty interesting. I think, as you guys saw how hot this can got, if we went just a little bit further, we probably would have seen this can deform or completely fail. So yes, flow-throughs are very important for this gun, I will say. That's one thing about the M249 and the Knights Arma NT4. One, that can sounds way better. It's definitely a tank, but extremely gassy. That setup was very gassy. The flow-through definitely helps with that. As you know, what these guns are, the role that these guns are intended to be in, you're probably going to be in a stationary position when you're doing these high fire rates. So having a ton of gas back to your face, it's not good for anyone. It's bad for your health, one, but also if you're having to squint and move around because there's so much gas in your face, it's obviously not a good thing. So flow through is definitely necessary for this, but maybe something like an RC3 or something a little more durable than this Huxworks will be a better option for this guy. So now what we're gonna do is get a closer look of the actual components of this gun comparatively to the SAW, just to show you guys how similar it is, and I'm also gonna point out some of the nitty-gritty things that make this gun different. You guys are probably aware of a lot of these already, but I just wanna point them out, especially for you guys that are considering purchasing something like this. So starting from the front of the guns and working back, the first thing we're going to obviously notice is that there is no rail on top of the M249. If you do see M249s with something going on the top here, it's attached to the barrel itself. Here with the FightLite, it is basically an AR-15 upper. We do have a complete handguard. Now there is an op rod that travels on the side of this, so the operating systems are slightly different. So I understand the need for this, but just understand that this makes changing barrels a lot easier. I can just basically drop the barrel straight in. I don't have to feed it through anything. If you're doing that at night or under any sort of duress, it just makes it a little bit more difficult, especially with how these barrel changes are slightly different. So both of the guns need to be locked to the rear. I'll explain that in a second, but the FightLite's actually pretty difficult. So you have to mash this button down, and it takes a good amount of force. I will say I was hoping that it was just going to break in and it was going to get easier over time, but we are at 5,000 rounds or so on this guy, and it's still very difficult. And you have to mash the button when you put the barrel back in as well. I was also hoping that over time that we'd be able to just slam the barrel in and be good to go, but that's still not the case. And as you can see right now, it's somewhat seated, but not completely. Sometimes it needs a little turn or something, and then it'll pop into place. So the barrel change system is pretty good. It's not nearly as fast as the SAW though. So for the SAW, bolt to the rear, all you're doing is hitting this lever here. It's kind of an awkward thing for me to do. And it comes right out, and I don't need to engage this lever to put the barrel back in. It just goes right in. It's pretty simple. So the barrel changes, as you guys saw through the evaluation, are much faster with the M249, and that is mainly because of the design. Now moving back to the feed tray and dust cover area, M249, 2 buttons to lift it up. It's very nice and convenient to do, and it also has this little catch here that keeps this guy up, which is very convenient for reloads. The FightLite is just 1 button. On this side you have to push it forward, and then it's only gravity that keeps this guy up, so there is no catch. So sometimes when you're reloading, this guy will instantly fall in your hand, kind of annoying. Additionally, in this location, one thing to note that we should talk about are these catches for rounds and links. The SAW has them, the FightLite does not. This makes catching your links on the feed tray much, much easier. We kind of already talked about it, but just one thing to note there. Now, we're gonna try and show you guys how similar the rest of this area is. So just looking at all of these mechanisms, you can tell that it's extremely similar to the M249. There's not much change going on here. There's a little bit obviously, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same. All right, so moving on from there, we're gonna talk about the charging handle. So the M249, to lock the charging handle to the rear, all you do is pull it back and it'll lock. You don't need to hold down anything, but given the fact that the FightLite is kind of like an AR-15, really technically it is, I need to hold the bolt catch down. Now, the M249, the charging handle is on the right side of the gun. I'm gonna move this guy out of the way because we're about done talking about that gun. The FightLite, however, is on the left side. So if I want to lock the bolt to the rear, I need both of my hands on the same side of the gun, which ergonomically is kind of difficult to do. So if you're running just traditional magazines, you will get bolt lock. So barrel change will be pretty quick. But if you're running links, or you need to do a barrel change mid while you still have ammunition in the gun, you have to lock the bolt to the rear, and especially when there's an ammunition source in here, it's really difficult to get around to the bolt catch itself. So what you got going on here, and get these bipods out of the way. Is a traditional AR-15 lower. Just the FightLite requires a specific bolt catch. The uppers come with it. It just extends out, or if you take a mil-spec bolt catch and just cut it off, so you have just the bottom part, that'll work too. Just note that this is much less ergonomically efficient comparatively to the SAW because the controls are on the same side. However, if you get a lower like this Black Widow, it's an armed lower, that is a belt-fed specific lower. On the other side, there is a slot for a PDQ lever, which would make reloads and barrel changes a lot easier because I can use my index finger to lock the bolt while manipulating the charging handle on the other side. That would work great. We don't have one. We'll definitely upgrade to that at some point. Now, other than that, I think that's about it for showing what's kind of important with just the components of the gun. The bolt, if you're curious, is just a modified AR-15 bolt to work in this sort of guy. Standard AR-15 buffer, like we mentioned earlier. I will say with the AR-15 buffer, actually, this guy uses a carbine buffer tube, H3 buffer, rifle length spring with a spacer. So it needs a lot of buffer for this system to operate. And then I didn't have to change it going from the 12.5 suppressed to the 16-inch barrel suppressed. And I needed the gas turned all the way up on this gun. So yes, this gun ran extremely fast. I didn't get the rates of fire. That's one thing that I forgot to do. But as you guys can hear from the video, this gun was much faster than the M249. If we turned the gas down on either of the barrels, it wasn't nearly as reliable. So it needed all of that gas. Now, speaking of reliability of these guns, like I said, this is not a reliability or durability test, but this gun functioned flawlessly. Didn't really have any problems. In fact, the first 1,500 rounds of this gun fired both magazines and links. I didn't even oil it. It was just straight out of the box. Just ran it to try to break it in, trying to see if it would choke up. And the only time it did choke up was when we were just messing with the gas. So if you're gonna purchase one of these, make sure you get the recommended buffer for the gun. I think what I'm seeing online from other people testing this is issues with the incorrect buffer. So highly recommend just getting what they recommend, and you should be good to go. All right, so the last thing we're gonna talk about is just the build of this gun real quick. So we got two barrels going on. So we have a 16-inch barrel, and we have their muzzle brake from FightLite. This thing is extremely aggressive. It hurts to shoot. So if you're running this guy on a 12.5-inch barrel, good luck. This thing is aggressive. And on that note, I do believe for this gun to be controllable, because of how light it is, as you guys saw early in the video, the weight differences between this gun and that gun, this gun needs a brake or a suppressor. It is very, very jumpy without those two things. So if you're gonna run this gun unsuppressed, the brake sucks, but I think it's kind of essential. Versus the SAW, it's very heavy, it doesn't run as fast, it's easier to control versus this guy. Now, the second barrel, as you guys can see in there, 12.5-inch Huxworks suppressor, we got the professional grade upper. So there's professional, commercial, Raptor, and DMX lines. I don't think the DMX line is out as of the filming of this video, but basically what the professional grade gives you is that muzzle brake. That's really the biggest difference between that and the commercial. And if you step down to the Raptor, you don't get the front sight post, you get a different handguard. You don't get the handle, which, like we kind of already mentioned, doesn't really do much for you, although it's completely necessary. You still need it. This is better than nothing. You don't have an adjustable gas block with the Raptor, but it's still dual feed, still belt fed, still has the quick change barrel. And then the DMX upper that's coming out is even slimmed down from there. It's not a quick change barrel. It's basically just an AR-15 upper that is belt fed capability. It doesn't have adjustable gas block or anything like that. Still piston though. So I will say if you're gonna purchase one of these, don't get M-LOK. Definitely get the Picatinny. The M-LOK on the left side of the gun is basically unusable because of the op rod in the way. And also this gun gets really hot. You're gonna need the extra material that Picatinny provides, in my opinion. So on the handguard note, I really wish you can get the Raptor handguard for these guys. I think the Raptor handguard being much more slim and smaller would make grabbing this handle a little bit easier. And as you can tell with the M249 counterpart, you don't need a top rail. I don't think it's necessary. We have a sling attached to it, for example. It's not completely necessary. So I would definitely prioritize getting this rail a little bit smaller to get to this handle, if that was an option. But moving back from there, we have EOTech magnifier. I think it's a great setup for a gun with this intended purpose, or something like an L-can. Something that's durable, has variable magnification of some kind. Probably wouldn't go LPVO though. Moving on to the lower, we have a Black Widow Arms lower. So this is a belt-fed AR-15 lower. So like you guys noticed, this does take magazine still. So it's still just a standard AR-15 lower-ish. They cut out this part to have belts ride a little bit higher. Because if you use the standard AR-15 lower with their adapter, the mags or belts sit really low, so the gun needs very long bipods. This raises it up about 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches, which is quite a bit. So that is really, really nice. So if you're gonna spend the coin for a setup like this, I'd recommend getting a dedicated lower for it, even though it can go on standard AR-15 lowers. For the furniture, just things to note that I think are really important. The B5 stock that we have going on here with the adjustable cheek riser, these optics sit up pretty high. Definitely think that an adjustable cheek riser where you can get a good firm cheek well is pretty important for guns like this. And then we just have mag pull grip and a foregrip. So the foregrip is definitely necessary for how hot this gun gets. So in the prone, you see us grabbing the bipod, you standing, running around and gunning. The foregrip is probably gonna be how you manipulate the gun. So on the side, we have a maul and just a Surefire light. So this is actually a really convenient setup, looks really cool. And when I purchase one of these, I'm probably gonna run the exact same setup because I think it's extremely cool. Most importantly is the trigger that's in this gun. Obviously we have a forced reset trigger. This is the Rare Breed's most updated version, so it is a 3 position. So that means I have just semi-auto, and then we have the forced reset mode. This is actually a really good trigger. So you would think that these triggers are kind of garbage, but it feels like a pretty decent mil spec in the semi, and then the forced reset works flawlessly. So these are pretty pricey. They're about 500 bucks, I believe, and that comes with the trigger and the safety. The safety, honestly, not the best, but the capability it brings is pretty tremendous. And the last thing to note about the build is the bipod itself. So given the fact this is M-LOK, just not the best mounting solution for bipods going on here. We actually have this like scout light mount that's sticking out to get the bipod to sit a little bit farther forward and still have room for your hand. Not the best setup, but just thing to note about bipods, you really want a beefy bipod for this. Something like this Accutech bipod is going to be much better suited than something that's lightweight and flimsy. This guy is extremely sturdy, very impressed with these bipods, and for the build that I buy for myself, I'm probably going to do the exact same bipod. This thing is legit. That's about it for the entirety of the build of the gun. I'm sure you guys are wondering what the price of a loadout quite like this is. So if you go to the FightLite website, you're going to notice that these uppers are not cheap. Yes, the capability is now in the reach of civilians, but the price point of building out something like this may be out of reach for some of you guys, and I totally understand that. But I just want to put in perspective the cost of this gun, because it's really not as bad as you may think it is. It's still expensive, don't get me wrong. I think it's expensive for anyone these days. But this entire gun, minus the laser and the suppressor, but the FightLite with the lower FRT trigger, optic and light, were right under 10 grand, and that was with 2 barrels and a bipod as well. So, and all of the furniture. Now, if you compare that to a completely decked out AR-15 with suppressor, light laser capability, good light laser capability, good suppressor, you're going to be around $8,000 when it's all said and done, especially if you have a magnified optic. If you get into the precision game, you have a precision gun with all of the supporting equipment like a Kestrel, your chrono, a good optic, laser rangefinder maybe, your price point's going to be about the same. So when it comes down to capability, guns get expensive. If you're looking for just guns to train with, guns are cheaper. But as soon as you bring, military type capability to your firearms, they get pricey, and this is no exception. So that's about all we got for you guys. I appreciate your time in watching this video. Last thing I just want to do is just give a shout out to all of these companies that are pushing the envelope, pushing into those gray areas, like FightLite, like Rare Breed, like the companies that are doing super safeties, things that are bridging military capabilities into the civilian world without breaking any rules somehow. So what we've seen in the past is military capabilities come over to the civilian side, be normalized, become more popular, like body armor, SBRs, suppressors, night vision, thermals, precision guns. You've seen all the trends, and right now this is the current trend, getting forced reset triggers into rifles that can maintain high rates of fire for long periods of time. And as civilians, as we prepare the civilian defense industry, as we continue to advance it, these are things we need to look for. We need to look for those military capabilities that we don't have currently and find ways to get them, normalize them. That's how we're going to push back on the government overreach that we're facing. So again, appreciate your guys' time for watching this video. If you guys have any questions regarding this stuff, feel free to email us. We'll be happy to help you, and we'll catch you guys next time.
We got him.